grid-tied systems in California require a permit, and you're going to have to probably pay a fair amount of money if you have an electrician do this work. So the question is, how are you going to do it yourself, or are you going to do part of it? How comfortable are you with doing panel work, working with a electrical panel and installing this breaker here in the panel, possibly running the wire down the wall to here, and setting these boxes and running the wire. So this all has to be done to code, and it's going to be inspected. So you're also going to generate a set of plans using probably I used a PV toolkit plus the California set of guide. It's the California guide. So here are the plans that I used here. So here's the this is from the California guidebook. You just fill out this set of plans, and the city then will just stamp pretty much just, you can get an over-the-counter stamp on this set of plans. And then I also used PV Toolkit, and I think it's better to do both. PV Toolkit actually provides more details on what's going on here, and then I was able to use this for the Edison part, the utility part, and then of course you get inspection record. The problem is that the system costs in components from the Alti store was $4,500, and just the labor quote on the electrical was $2,000. Okay, and then the other thing is, this portion of the cost is just kind of a fixed cost. You can go and put a bunch of stuff on the future stuff on your roof and leave this roughly the same if you plan correctly. So in my case, I've got a 2.7 kilowatt system I'm going to put up on the roof, but this fixed component is probably going to be about $2,500 in parts and labor if I was to pay somebody else. So basically, the work, I think you can break it into components. You've got the panel work here, which generally involves putting a breaker at the bottom. If you don't have this space at the bottom, you have to reorganize your breakers, and you have to make sure you have space for this breaker here, this backfeed breaker. The next phase is the component mounting and wiring between components. It's not very difficult. In this case, I used superstrut. So basically, I put down the superstrut, and then I put the components on top. And you may say, oh well, I'll just mount the components. I don't want to do it. But the problem is, EMT is really hard to work with, and you want to have yourself flexibility where you can move these things around, keep them loose before you actually tie them together. And the superstrut is actually pretty good for that. And the problem is the electrical plans all call for EMT, and you have to learn EMT, and it's quite quite frustrating at times. So for that, you get an EMT bender. One of these tools are only like $40, and then what I did in advance is I painted my EMT. Well, it's not a good idea to you can paint the ends, but the problem is you have to eventually take a tool and get the paint off the ends before you make the couplings, because you'll fail your electrical inspection, I think. So the problem is, it's going to take you a while to learn. I used some iPhone applications to help me with my bends. I think I would just go ahead and burn. You just go buy a couple extra pieces. These are $5 a piece, these EMT pieces. You could buy some extra pieces and start bending. Now sometimes you'll get through a bend of something like this, where I've done several bends, and then you get to the very end and you screw up. Okay, so sometimes what you do is you get out a sample piece before you screw this one up. You get out a sample piece and do a couple sample bends. It's quite frustrating. The other thing that you're gonna do is I haven't showed you here, but there's some roof work that I've yet to do. Right now I've just gone up to the roof and I've actually pierced the roof there, and I have a flashing. I think as far as bending, which is my biggest challenge, just look at a lot of YouTube video on bending first. And then as far as the parts, basically there's only a few parts. You've got these connectors, and then you've got these, sorry, these are the connectors, and these are the couplers, and you pretty much just need those. And on top, and then you just have straps that you have to put at a required distance. The parts are super cheap. What I would recommend to do is just buy extra parts at the store, and then just return the parts that you don't use. You'd be surprised how, when you go through your start doing the install, you'll find your design might change a little bit with how what your route's going to be. My route changed quite a bit. Let's see, what else did I have? Let's see, I think that's pretty much it. I would budget for this job, I would budget probably three days in labor. It's hard to imagine it, but it's going to take you probably about 3 days to do a job of this scope if you don't know how to bend conduit. Anyway, I'll stay tuned for the next video.